Alright guys, so before we get started actually cleaning the brass, I'm going to walk you through sort of the different components of my rotary tumbler, one of which is not actually visible right now, but you'll see it soon enough, don't worry. But the important stuff for getting it set up for the tumbling process is you need your drum, which is right here. You'll also need these end caps. So you got these clear end caps on the Frankford Arsenal rotary tumbler. And on these there's a little rubber gasket, so I take that off and clean it after each use. But what that's going to do is that's going to fit over this clear plastic area. It's going to create that watertight seal for when you're actually tumbling the brass. And then you've got the end cap, which sort of fits over this. So you'll see it fits down in there. And take the cap, screw it on, bam, done. Okay. So that's setting up the actual drum for the tumbler. Beyond that, we've also got cleaning solution. So I use Lemon Shine. I use about 1/4 of a teaspoon per full drum. So for me, that's about 1,000 9mm brass casings. And then, of course, Liquid Dawn. I use 3 tablespoons of this per full drum. Measuring spoons, picked them up off eBay, or Amazon. Super cheap, like $1. Does the job though. And then of course we've got our little measuring container. So this is just an old bucket of 22. So I actually counted it out, and inside here there's a ring at the top, and if I stay just below that, it's about 500 rounds. And so if I do 2 of these, then that's my 1,000 casings. So I highly recommend that you find some cheap little, whether it's a bucket or a cup, you measure 5 cupfuls or scoopfuls or whatever it is, just to make sure that you can easily get roughly the quantity that you want. Unless you're going to sit there and count out 1,000 cases, it seems pointless. So just rough estimates. You just want to make sure, if you're going to do that method, just make sure you err on the side of not putting too much. You'd rather put too little and then add a few casings after you add your water and your tumbling media, than the other way around and have to reach down in there and start pulling out brass. It's now wet and it's no fun. So always err on the side of going fewer casings than what you can tumble, to make sure that you make your weight limit for whichever brand of tumbler that you're using. Wet tumbler, that is. I'm not sure about vibratory dry tumblers, how they're doing their measurements, if you can't exceed a certain weight limit. But for wet tumblers, for sure. Beyond that, we've got, you probably can see, oh yeah, it's sort of down here. Ooh, didn't mean to shake that. Down over here, the silver stuff, those are the stainless steel pins. That's actually the tumbling media. That's the stuff that's going to, go over the brass and remove any carbon or any other contaminants from your brass as it's tumbling through the water. Spent brass. I label my stuff, so 9mm raw is for me raw and deprimed, ready for wash. Just keeping track of how you store your brass. And then of course, water. One last thing. This little guy, the pickup tool. So throughout this process, these steel pins over here, they're really tiny. They're hard to pick up by hand. And so when you're trying to separate media, or you're trying to strain it for drying, or any of the steps in the process along the way, if you need to deal with these, it's going to be pretty difficult. And so I got one of these little pickup tools. Allows me to easily pick up, and then I just pull the little handle and nothing is on there now. So real easy. Again, just hover over, it grabs it, pull the handle, everything goes back. So alright, I'm going to go ahead and load up. I generally put in my media first. So I don't want you guys to have to sit around and watch that process. So I'm going to load up the media, and then I will talk about, you know, loading the brass and, you know, how that entire process goes. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in a minute. All right, guys. So have the cap on the underside, one of the clear caps with the actual lid, and inside, I don't know if you can see, kind of hard. Not a lot of light in there. Let's see. There is. Can you see it? There we go. 5 pounds of steel media. So that's what I use. It came with my tumbler. You know, if you're diligent about picking up your steel pins and not losing them along the process, dumping them down the drain, whatever. I mean, I've used these for several loads. You should be able to wash tons of brass before you need to replace these, especially if you take good care of them, rinse them afterwards, dry them off. You know, don't leave them sitting in the drum, you know, soaking up water and getting all rusty. You know, you saw how it looked. I mean, that's pretty clean. So anyways, so once you've got that in there, you know, you've got your lid secured on the bottom, then you can measure out your brass. So it goes, for me, it goes media, brass, water, detergent, cleaner, whatever, cleaning solution. You know, I don't measure out my water and be like, oh, 1.5 gallons beforehand and then dump my brass in there. If my brass is a little bit off, like, and then I got to scoop out water. Brass first. So like I said, I got that little internal marker of the at the top of the bucket that sort of denotes that around that 500 mark. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill that up. Okay, and so you'll see that I'm actually a little bit shy, you know, probably like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch shy. Again, that's on purpose, guys. It's just to make sure I don't overfill my tumbler. So a little bit shy of that. Go ahead and dump that in. Next step, water. So typically I do this in the bathroom. I just use the faucet on the tub, but for video's sake, you know, unfortunately the bathroom that I use, the light and the fan are connected, so it makes for terrible recording. So I filled up a couple gallons of water. It also gives you sort of an idea of how much water goes into these. So double, triple check. Yeah, all right, it's tight on the bottom. So gallon number 1 goes in. Okay, so 1 gallon gets me about 4/5 of the way there, so I'm not even going to use the total amount of this other one. What I will do, let's see if I can pick this bad mother up, is I will try and fill it to just below this case neck right here. It's not a huge deal if you're a little bit shy. Again, I don't overfill. I'd rather have a little bit more space in there. Not a ton, mind you, but if you fill it up to just around this area, around the case neck area, you should be fine. So that's, again, you can't really see. Let's see if I can move this. Ooh, you can see it splashing around. That's about where I fill it up to. Not way up top, but you know, enough. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding my cleaning solutions. So first, lemon shine. I do a half teaspoon. Half teaspoon for 1,000, roughly 1,000. Do it over the container in case you spill a little bit. All right, dump that in there. That's going to be what shines up your brass. Citric acid, I think, is another alternate that you could use. Personally, like, this thing is a 1/4 teaspoon is, let's see how many servings there are. Some ridiculous amount, or half teaspoon rather. 24 ounces. So you can do the math. I'll do it on the blog post. Anyways, you're going to wash a ton of brass. So now, Dawn, for the cleaning agent, do 3 of these. 1, 2, and I usually do 3. Try and give it a little rinsey rinse in the water just to clean off some of it. You're not going to get all of it. Somebody just messaged me. Alright, I'll just set this aside. Okay, so some people will wet this rubber seal here. I don't do a ton. You know, let's see if I can get a little bit of water out of this. Alright, so that's that rubber gasket that I was talking about. So you're going to seat that right there. And then you're going to take the screw-on cap and get it seated. Oh, real quick. When you're seating this, make sure that on the top of your lid there are not any steel pins, primers, pieces of dirt, whatever, that could break that seal. It's important. We're going to check the water seal anyways, but before you do it, it's a good thing to do. So yeah, so put this on. Tighten this up. And I am going to take this and I'm just going to go whoop. Okay, no water there. Shake this around. Make sure the brass pins go elsewhere. Do the same thing. Okay, I don't have any spillage, so we are in a good spot. So at this point, it's ready to put on the tumbler itself. Alright guys, so forgot to mention this before I put my stuff on the tumbler. You should weigh and make sure that your stuff is not exceeding the weight limit. I've already washed the brass, so I'm just going to weigh it now. But I know from having done multiple loads like how much I can put in there. So I can't exceed 30. So you guys are going to get to check my work. So I have a scale here. And I'm just going to take my tumbler that is still full of water. I'm going to turn it on. I am going to turn it on. There we go. And put it on there, and it errored. Try this again. And we're at, hopefully you can see that arrow. Take it off. We are at 26.5 pounds. Alright guys, it's pretty straightforward. You just want to rest this on the wheel, this like textured area of the drum, you want to rest that on the wheels of the actual tumbler. There are 4 wheels, so you're going to have 4 points of contact. You want to make sure that it's level. I mean, this table is not very level. It was a piece of scrap plywood, 3/4 inch, I think, plywood, and it had a little bit of a bow, so there's a little bit of being out of level, but it works just fine. And so now come down here, rotary tumbler, timing. So within the paperwork for this, it said do it for 1 to 2 hours for 500 or less. Anything above 500, you do 3 hours. I tumble my brass for 3 hours, regardless. Worst case scenario, it gets a little bit more clean than it would if I only did 1 to 2 hours. to each their own. You know, I want as clean of brass as I can possibly get before I work with it, because you are working with stuff that is, you know, not super safe. You know, as with everything with firearms. So the more edge you can give yourself to take out any human error, the better. So go ahead and start this up. And now it gets real loud. So over here, this is what it looks like from the side. As you can see, that steel media is mixing in. You'll start to see some suds maybe a little bit later. Yeah, so now it's just a waiting game. 3 hours. What's going on, guys? So now we're at the stage where we're actually separating the media, the water, from the actual brass. And there's a couple things that I did not talk about initially that are probably worth mentioning. So first is a straining bucket. I've got a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket here. I've used it for various things. Now it's almost exclusively used for draining the water out and separating the media. I've also got a little mini trash can here. This is going to come in handy for once I drain everything out. There's going to be media and water in here in this 5-gallon bucket, and so I'm going to slowly sort of dump that into here to make sure that the media actually stays separate from the water. Afterwards, I also use this to sort of put clean water in through or into the 5-gallon bucket so that I can rinse the brass. Simultaneously, it'll be rinsing the media, and once that is done, I also use this to separate out the media from the used water, so that I'm not dumping any steel pins down the drain. So again, 2 buckets. You can get 2 5-gallons, whatever. I found it easier to have a smaller one that allows me to empty out the larger bucket into. Helps keep me slow, keep me patient, and make sure I do things the correct way. But whatever you guys want to do. The other 2 things is, one, towels. I'm standing on them currently, but towels are going to be important. You're going to need to put your brass onto them. It's sort of your preliminary drying technique, just to help get some of that excess moisture off, any steel pins that might be caught in, you know, your primer pockets, in the actual casing itself. It's just a way for you to help do an initial drying and separate out that media. And the last piece, which is also very important, are these straining attachments for the drum. So these will replace those clear cups that you can sort of see right here. You can see the foam from the actual soap that's in there. You're going to put these in there. This will catch your brass. There's 2 different, they're different sizes, so the brass should not slip through this. I've had 1 or 2 casings come through. It's not that big of a deal. But for the most part, this will keep the brass in the tumbling drum while allowing the media to escape. Also, it's pretty nasty stuff, and you'll see it as I pour it out. This water is pretty gross, guys. So, caustic materials, should be using gloves. You know, it's up to you if you want to or not. I have, on occasion, been known to not take my health and safety and put it at the forefront, but because this is a video, doing things the correct way. So, first step first, gloves on. And now what I'm going to do, put this up over. Alright, so I got 2 of these guys. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off. Inserts the same way as this piece here. It's just going to replace this one. Set that off to the side. I'll rinse it later. Put this in. And first step. Oh yeah. Look at that beautiful water. So that's going to drain most of the stuff out. Now, I just set it down in the bucket, unscrew the top, take off the other clear one. And replace with the strainer. This one's going to move a little bit. Not to worry, it's not going to let anything out. Sit here. Shake the brass. You may also see some pins coming out as I flip this. Go the other way. Dunk it. A lot of suds on this one. Don't usually have this many. Alright, so I got a decent chunk of them out. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain out this dirty water into that smaller bucket so that I can keep the steel pins in there in the larger 5-gallon bucket, and then dump that down the drain, refill with clean water, which will allow me to sort of run that through the brass that's in here. I'm going to fill this 5-gallon bucket about halfway is sufficient when it's all said and done, and that will allow me to finish getting a majority of that steel media out. So first things first, let's start doing some straining. If I'm in and out of the picture, that's why. It's just this is the more time-consuming process. So now I'm going to put my clean water in here. Yeah, that's probably good enough. Again, this is another preliminary sort of step, guys. This is to help get any excess soap that's on the drum out of there. I found sort of angling this drum as you shake it will help dislodge any of the pins. You're not going to get everything, but the more you jostle this, the more media that you're going to get out. So then I'm going to flip it over. Again, we've got that strainer on both sides. Dip it in here, submerge it, let it drain out. A few good shakes. Alright, so got most of the media separated out. Now we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. We're going to strain out all of this nasty water. Again, you can shortcut it if you want, not use an extra bucket, but I find that it's best to prevent losing any media. Alright, so now got your media separated from your brass. Problem is your brass still has suds and things that may be on it. I mean, I rinsed it decently thoroughly, but I always like to do a rinse cycle of just the brass as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this steel media. Again, this is why you need towels. Out. And now we have a clean bucket. If you don't have a clean bucket, just run your magnet all along the inside, pick up any debris, any leftover media. I don't have any. So now I'm going to take my brass, which is all pearly and clean. Now I'm going to dump that in. If you want, you can leave it in here. You can do the method where you fill the bucket up halfway, jostle it around. For me, this is just easier. You'll also notice that there's a decent amount of steel pins left in this drum, as you probably heard when I was dumping it out. We'll clean that up later. For right now, I'm just going to get some clean water, put it in here, swish it around, empty it, maybe do that twice. So now we've got clean brass, but it's still wet. So what I usually do, oh, some steel pins got on this one. Is I take a fresh towel. I'm not worried about that little bit of soapy water that's on the ground. Let's see if we can see this a little bit clearer. So then I take this, dump it on there. Like I said, there's always some steel media left. You can actually see it, there's a little bit right here. Oh, you guys can't see it, never mind. And then I grab the four corners. And just kind of roll it around. Try and get all that moisture off. All right, guys. Hopefully that washing piece wasn't too painful. I may be a little bit more careful than most when it comes to rinsing the brass off. There's also an easier way. God, I forgot what it's called. The Frankford Arsenal, they have like a media separator. And basically what you do is you dump everything from the tumbler drum into this hand-spun device. And basically what it does is you close up the top and you just spin the media and the brass, and it shoots out any media that might be inside the brass casings. It's an easier way. I still think that you might want to rinse your brass afterwards and get any last little pieces. And then, of course, you know the whole technique with the towel that I showed earlier, where you just kind of spot dry it just to get any standing water off of it. But then now we're on to the actual drying piece. So it's been maybe 5 minutes since we did everything. And I just go straight into the dryer. I don't know if others do that. That's what I do. So now we're just going to load up the dryer. Alright guys, so what I have here is at least a portion of the Hornady Digital Parts Dryer. There is another piece that we'll insert into the top of this, which I'll show you in a second here. But the first thing that we need to do is we need to load up the brass into this thing. And it's real simple. It's just tiers of plastic trays that sit on top of one another. So I can usually fit all 1,000 casings in here. So take a handful. Be careful not to drop it in that center ring. It's not so bad on the first try or on the first tray, but once you get up 3 or 4 trays, it can be a bear to take everything off, get down in there, pick up that 1 or 2 casings that you dropped in, and put it all back together. So you want to arrange everything in a single layer, so that way nothing is being impeded from drying. Maybe I overfill it a little bit. but you'll see that when you set these other trays on top of it, it's pretty forgiving in terms of your spacing. You don't need to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Alright, so now my parts dryer from Hornady is all loaded up. Now I got this big honking red cone thing. And this is the actual piece that does everything. This is where the wire connects. And I am just going to insert that into the actual base. And now we're ready to dry. So temperature 140, 149, 158, and it sets all the way down to 104. I usually do mine at 140. Time I set for an hour, which is easy because I got this little time button here, and then I hit on. And now the brass is drying, and you wait an hour, and then, my friends, you have completely cleaned and dried casings ready for your reloading needs. Again, this is I'm doing pistol brass right now, 9mm to be exact. There's obviously other steps that have to be taken before you have a finished product. However, in terms of using a tumbler, you know, emptying out your tumbler, separating the media from your tumbler, you know, drying the casings once they're out of the tumbler, you know, my methodology, I've sort of outlined it here and shown you firsthand how I do it. So yeah, good luck you guys. Hopefully you found this informative, and if you do, leave a comment. If you don't, keep it to yourself, because chances are there's somebody out there who did find this constructive and useful. So anyways, thank you guys, and I'm signing off. Mike from EverydayCarryConcealed.com. Catch you guys later.